So a couple of weeks ago, Salsa released the Journeyman. Is it a cutthroat, a warbird, a cutbird? Is it the bike that you're gonna take on your next journey? You see what I did there? Find out in this video review. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're not a hardcore roadie or a hardcore mountain biker, but love riding bikes, especially on mixed terrain, we're all about the supple life, consider subscribing. And full disclaimer, once again, this is an independent review. I'm not being paid to do this review by QBP or by Salsa. And this is really made possible by you guys. So if you want to support more independent bike reviews like this, check out the PayPal link in the description below. So QBP recently released 3 650B bikes that were really interesting. The Surly Midnight Special that we reviewed on the channel, the Gorilla Monsoon, which I'm supposed to review from All City but haven't heard back from them recently, and the Salsa Journeyman, which I've been riding for the last 2 weeks on different mixed terrain rides here in Missoula. So it's not a surprise that Salsa would come out with this bike, but what I think is surprising is the price point. This is the Sora build, and it's their most expensive model, clocking in at $1,100 MSRP. That's just amazing. But what do you get for this price? Well, we'll jump into that a little bit further on in the review. So let's get started. The Salsa Journeyman is an aluminum frame bike with a carbon fork. The bike weighs in, on our scales, in the mid-20s, about 25, maybe 26-ish with the pedals. So not lightweight, definitely heavier than the Warbird or even the Surly Midnight Special. Kind of on par with a Salsa Via or other steel bike build. And it has all the brazons and the nubbins you can ask for. There are 3 bottle mounts in the frame triangle, 2 little nubbins on the top tube to bolt on top tube bags, the adventure mounts on the fork. There's also drillings for fenders, and on the rear you can also put on a rear rack. In terms of places and holes to bolt things onto your bike, the Journeyman's got pretty much all of them. And of course, this bike is the 650B model. You guys know I'm a big fan of that wheel and tire size, and it's outfitted with the WTB Nanos at 2.1 inches. For the drivetrain, it is running Sora shifters and rear derailleur, which, while not the highest spec shifter out there, it actually works really well. It's got a nice hood shape, it's not big and bulbous and ugly, so perfectly functional. The rear cassette is a Sunrace 1134, and the front chain rings is where things are actually pretty interesting, but in a good way. They spec'd it out with a FSA crankset, which has a chainring combo of 4630. And I totally love that Salsa spec'd this bike out with this chainring combination. I feel too often gravel bikes or bike touring bikes get spec'd with compact road doubles, which makes no sense, especially if you're fully loaded, especially if you're off terrain and you're kind of like an average or beginning rider. So this crankset makes sense for this bike and for the potential user. So I applaud them for that, for not just sticking on another compact road double. The handlebars are cowbells. Actually would have preferred the cow chippers. I feel like that would have been a better fit for this bike. Just a little bit more flair for off-road situation. The saddle is a WTB Volt that's meh. And probably the biggest thing that most people are going to freak out about are the wheels are quick release, not through axle, quick release. So I know through axles are kind of becoming the industry standard, and a lot of people aren't going to be excited by the fact that it's quick release, and I totally get that. I see the functionality of the through axle in terms of always getting the wheel in there so you're not getting rotor rub with a disc brake. Through axles also add stiffness, people say, but to be honest, I think if you put me on 2 bikes with quick release and through axle, I personally wouldn't be able to tell any difference in torsional, is that the word? Stiffness. So yes, a little bit of a bummer that it's not through axle if that's something you're really into. But hey, I've been riding disc brake bikes with quick releases for at least like 6 years off-road, and the bikes haven't exploded, so there's that. So generally, in terms of the parts that come on this bike, there's nothing that is going to wow you. It's all really functional, workmanlike, but I think at this price point, it's okay. It's parts that you can wear out and upgrade as need be. So that's it for all the boring stuff. How does it ride? Where does it fit in the spectrum of Salsa drop bar bike? Is it more cutthroat? Is it more warbird? It's kind of complicated. So for the last couple weeks, I've been taking it on some couch to Canada training rides up here in Missoula, up paved climbs, down dirt descents, up dirt descents, and etc. My first big impression was that it's rides like a bike. It's actually a really well-balanced ride. There's nothing too squirrely or overly unpredictable about the bike. I like the front end handling. It reminds me of the Warbird. Pretty predictable on descent, comfortable, and not twitchy. It's pretty neutral handling in my opinion, which I think is perfectly fine for this bike. It's not supposed to have that race twitchiness. I think the front end handling is great for long rides, on pavement, on gravel, and it should still hold its stability when you put a load on it. In the rear end of the bike is where the handling gets kind of really nichey and granular. It's definitely quicker in the rear than a bike like the Salsa Via. It's not as quick in the rear as the Warbird, but it also happens, at least for me, to feel a bit more responsive than the Cutthroat. I know it's shades of gray at this point, but basically not as fast as a dedicated gravel race bike, definitely faster than your traditional touring bike. Going up hills, I really appreciated the lower gearing, and going down hills, I love the overall comfort and stability of the bike. I took it down a rocky descent, and I felt like it was a more stable descender than a bike like the Warbird. But at the same time, did not have kind of the liveliness in the rear from the Warbird. So what about its suppleness? Yes, it has 650B wheels and tires. The WTB Nanos that it came with offer pretty fast rolling resistance, a little sluggish on truly hard pack and pavement, but good bite on mixed terrain and even in slightly muddy conditions. However, I did feel that the casing of the tires generally stiffer than I would prefer personally. I mean, for some people, you guys will ride it and love it right off the bat. But I think to really accentuate the latent / potential suppleness of this bike, I'd probably switch to something with a little bit more softer, more responsive casing. I was running the tires at 20 PSI, set up with tubes, and usually at this tire pressure, I'd get that kind of nice feeling I'm looking for. But it felt a little bit stiff. Compared to something like the Compass Rat Trap Press run at similar pressures, the Compass tires will definitely give a little bit more and feel more supple. So a great platform for suppleness, but not quite there with these tires. That said, perfectly functional, and I definitely prefer this build with the 650B wheels and tires over the 700C version. So who is this bike for? I think if you're looking for an all-rounder bike that you can commute on, do road rides on, gravel rides on, and take bikepacking and bike touring at a price that will not break the bank, then this bike is definitely for you. In some ways, it's kind of the modern iteration of the Salsa Via. The Salsa Via is to traditional bike touring as the Journeyman is to this new mixed terrain gravel thing. I think, however, if you already have a bike like the Warbird or the Cutthroat, you're not really gonna get something all that new. It could work as a rainy day bike for you or a training bike. I think if you're a shorter person and want a all-rounder bike, then this bike is perfect. For me, I love the ride of the Warbird. I wish it had the mounts in the fork, and I wish it was 650B, and the Journeyman kind of ticks that box. I also have a Salsa Cutthroat, which I love for its comfort and all the mounts and nubbins on it, but the 29er wheel size just feels big for me. So again, the Journeyman kind of ticks that box as well. So having those two bikes already, I probably wouldn't spend the money to get a Journeyman, but if I didn't have any of those bikes, Journeyman would be first on my list. So overall, for the price, it's a great feature-packed bike from Salsa that covers almost all your bases. So if you're in the market for a gravel / bike packing bike and don't want to blow a lot of coin, definitely check out the Salsa Journeyman. And if you guys have any other questions about the ride or the bike, leave those in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, like, share, subscribe, consider supporting the channel, and keep the supple side down.